Good evening, everyone. And this is a late broadcast, not a late night show, but it's a later broadcast than normal. We've got the kids in bed, and I think it's going to be fun. Tonight, I'm talking to a photographer, filmmaker, fly fisherman I have followed for a good part of 12 years. And we're gonna chat about that, how I got to find him. And we've been connected on Facebook for quite some time, and every now and again we like each other's photos and leave a comment here and there. And I decided, well, let's hit Daniel up and see if he wants to come and chat to me. He is a fantastic photographer, underwater photographer, and he loves fishing. So that's where the connection came from. Back when I was still doing fishing trips and had a lot of connections in the fishing industry, that's how I found him on one of the fly fishing magazines. Yeah, and Daniel is in Germany, so we're going to hear from the other side of the world as well as to how things are going there and what the future is looking like. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. Please don't forget to subscribe and go and follow the Facebook page while we're posting these as well. So in case you missed them here and you want to go and see them on Facebook also, it won't be live, but you can go see them there. You can still ask questions. Daniel will be tagged in it, so you can also get to them and reply. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one. We've got 2 weeks left of doing this, and it has just been an amazing journey. And thank you for everyone that is watching. Right, let's get Daniel to come and join us. If you're watching, please just say hi in the comment section. I'd like to see who's there. Right, here's Daniel. Good evening.
Good evening, Dewald.
How are you?
I am very good today.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, after we've had a quick chat this morning, the kids are in bed.
Yes, sleeping well.
How old are your kids?
2 and 4.
Mine is 7 and 4, and then we've got a baby as well. So yeah,
So
I know
you get 3?
3 kids, yes.
Way to go.
Yeah, it's busy, but it's fun. They
Nice.
keep us young. They make us older.
Cool.
Yeah. So how's things in Germany?
Listen, I reckon comparing to other countries that we're very privileged. We have no confinement, so we can pretty much still move around. We have certain rules in daily life, which is we have to keep a minimum distance of 1.5 meters to another person. We should restrict moving in a city and spaces that are crowded. But still, we don't have any strict confinement like they have in France, for example.
Yes.
So we're and the situation regarding the health system is still very good. So the health system is not overwhelmed, and the death rate is very low, one of the lowest we have in the world right now. So crossing fingers, knocking on wood, I'm happy to be here, because actually we thought about going to France because we live in both countries. Okay. And just as the pandemic started, we thought about going there because we live in a very nice place in southern France. But then we quickly found out that the situation is much tougher in France than in Germany. So we stayed here. And anyhow, moving between countries is pretty much impossible right now. So you have to have a very clear reason why you want to cross a border. Actually, I could cross it because I'm born in France. So is my larger daughter. The 4-year-old one is born in France. So we might move, but still we will be confined to the house with just an hour of allowance to be outside of the house. And this has to be approved by the state. So very strict rules.
So they only allow people an hour outside the house. So if you've got a bit of a yard where the kids can play, they're only allowed to play outside for 1 hour.
Exactly. It's 1 hour per day maximum. And you have to get an approval of that. And you can get it online or at I don't know, some place. And once you go out, you actually say, I'm going to be outside from this time to this time. And you precisely determine which time you want to be outside. And if the cops catch you, find you, you have to show this permit basically that you are allowed to be outside. And if you have no permit, they're going to fine you on the spot. And it starts with 175 euros and it goes all the way up. So no one goes out. I have a lot of friends in France that are very sporty, that do trail running. It's all virtual sport now. They're doing it on all kinds of fancy stuff at home, but no one goes out. It's really strict in France. So yeah.
Unbelievable. We, in that sense, we are still pretty lucky. We've got a nice yard.
Yeah, cool.
So the kids can play outside and it's fenced in. Like most of South Africa, all the people have got fences or walls around because of the unfortunate crime rate. So my gate is locked, so nobody can come in. So the kids can play outside if they want to. But you know how children is when it's a beautiful day like today, they want to sit inside and watch TV and it's bloody cold outside. They want to play outside. So, yeah, it's a never-ending fight. But still, we're lucky with that. We can be outside the house when we want. Yeah. I quickly shot down to the shop earlier to get some just like bread and milk and stuff. Yeah. And there's still a lot of people, especially the poorer communities that's out in the roads walking. It's weird.
It is.
That's where I think if this pandemic hits us worse than what we are at the moment, I think the poor communities are going to suffer terribly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because they live in shacks. Like you said, you've been to South Africa before. You probably saw this. Yeah. Right on top of each other. There's no. Yeah. And also, a lot of times the police don't even want to go into these places because it's dangerous as it is. People just don't.
Yeah, and it's not going to show on the statistics because there's no one counting here. We have a good counting system in countries like here in Europe, but still the counting system varies from country to country. Who is infected? A lot of people get tested here in Germany. We have one of the highest in the world actually, but still to get precise numbers is very tricky on how many people are infected, how many people died actually. So it's a very weird situation, but as you said, we are very, very privileged. We can still move around. We have a good health system, so it's all good. I can't complain, and we'll pull through this. And we pretty much every second day we go out in nature into the woods where no one is. We spend the day in the outdoors, and then by night we come back, and so it's fine for the kids.
You live?
I'm based in Frankfurt, which is kind of like a big town with a huge airport we have. And the city itself is close to 800,000 inhabitants, but the entire area that I live in is 3 million. So it's kind of like really like many cities, one next to each other. And so yeah, it's a huge city. And but next to Frankfurt, we have beautiful forests. It's a nice landscape, nice rivers. So we go out. It's kind of like an hour's drive by car. and now we're just all by ourselves, which is very nice.
Beautiful. Okay, Daniel, just enough of the negative stuff.
Yeah.
Let's, like I said in the little intro, I found you 12 years ago by accident in a fly fishing magazine, and we had a quick chat about that this morning. But I think just tell the people watching and people that don't know you, what is it that you do for a living? How do you?
I don't know myself. I have many lives. So from my educational background is I have an MSc in geography and hydrology, or basically only geography, but I did most of my studies in hydrology, and I wrote my MSc in the field of hydrology, which is the science of water. But regarding the rules, I'm only allowed to call myself having an MSc in geography. So that's basically what I learned, my work background. So what I do is I do all kinds of stuff that are camera based, and be it fish monitoring. What I also do is classic photo work, and I do film work. And I do all this mostly outdoor related, fish related, fly fishing related, or fishing related. And I've done small scale films, but I've also done work for big TV stations, big companies, for syndicated shows. So my work is somehow it's broad, but still it's a very niche. Be it fish based, and I do lots of work underwater. So yeah, it's a big field, but still it's a very niche field. If this helps explain, we have to dig into more precise projects, I guess.
And how did you get to that from having a geology degree?
Yeah, I started working in that field doing research on lakes and water body restoration, which was very frustrating at that time, which is, we're not talking pretty much 20 years ago. And I was always, with all the fly fishing photography that I saw in magazines, I was never really happy with it. And I thought, I can do better than that. And by 2006, 2007, this is when the big digital revolution came. And so I pretty much jumped on that at the very beginning with a 5D, a Canon 5D. And I saw the potential, and I thought, man, I can do better. And I always wanted to take different kind of like stills, have a different angle on it. And I super quickly picked up an underwater housing for my Canon 5D. So I'm doing split shots for now. I picked it up in 2000, and it's the 5D Classic, which came out in, 2007. So we're not talking pretty much 13 years of underwater work that I've been doing. And so yeah, I jumped in. I tried to do different stuff, but also do a lot of underwater work, underwater still photography, especially in the field of fly fishing. Not only be it split shots, but also underwater shots of fish being released, showing fish underwater, because to me, fish look much nicer underwater compared to being held over water. So that's basically the beginning, yeah. And I did some fancy trips, and it started from there, yeah.
But okay, a question I've got in regards to that, to your work environment, is, and I'll ask it honestly, if you don't have to answer it, how lucrative is it for someone?
It's not lucrative at all. Let me tell you. If you go in such a niche, you will always give more love than you're going to receive. This is the fate of us photographers and filmmakers. And it's been there since day one. It hasn't changed. I'm not a rich man. It's sometimes it's lucrative, sometimes it's not. But just regarding the fields of fly fishing, it's not lucrative. It's because I want to be out there. I want to create nice images. And it's just, I'm driven by passion, by my heart. And beside that, I also do all kinds of, let's say, crappy photography here, which is kind of like daily work, be it weddings. I'm going to do a project for a building company where I'm going to take photos of building sites. I'm going to do a film on that. That is not the glorious fly fishing photography. There's another part to that brings the money on a daily basis or on a more regular basis, which I don't show on Insta because it's not interesting. So or on Facebook.
So you're, as you say, you don't show it, and I'm the same. Certain kind of things I don't show on my social feeds that I do. It's like weddings. I don't show so many weddings anymore because I still get a steady request for weddings. But it's not, and it's difficult to say, but that's not where my passion lies these days. If I book a wedding, I do it with 100% dedication, like I do every job I do. But I do a lot more commercial type of work, and a lot of my work at this stage is in the agricultural sector. And it's difficult to show that because a lot of those clients are not social media driven.
Absolutely.
So that goes by word of mouth and connections that I've built over years, where are that network together.
And that kind of work, people know that I do this kind of work, and that they know I do it quickly, I deliver quickly, and this is mostly what those people need. They call you, they need, we have this building site right now. Can you come in 2 days? It's gonna be an important stage that we need to have to be photographed. Come on, can you? Yes or nay? Let's go for it, jump in. And it's nothing fancy. It's just images they need for their websites or whatever, because it's a certain project. So nothing glorious, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. So that's good. But to come back to your question, you're not gonna get rich from that. Like you, I put 100% in every job that I do, and you have to, because everyone can be a photographer today. So it's not difficult, and by the end of the day, it's the discipline that counts. It's that you deliver, that you follow contracts, agreements, whatever, and that what counts at the end of the day. So, and of course your work has to be technically good, perfect, whatever. That is the norm today. Everyone can do this. My nephew can take awesome pictures, and he's just 19. So yeah.
And it also comes with what I found is when I go to a job, I'm not just there to take pictures. And I say to people, if you need me to move something for you, and a lot of my work is also outdoor based, so I'm outside with clients, and I said, listen, if you need me to light the fire for the bride, tell me. She says, quickly, I'm just busy, and the kind of stuff I do, and that's the value that I feel I bring to people, is that I'm not there, because a lot of photographers, and I'm pretty sure you know it as well, they think that they are the God's gift to the client.
No.
And that's not how you should be. You should be an extension for the client, because that will make sure that you get the best possible photo done.
Exactly. I totally agree. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's tricky to navigate on how much you do on a site. I find it difficult, and especially the larger the shoot is, you should stick to what you have to do, and really have precisely figured that out in beforehand, so you don't mess around.
And I'm quite lucky. I've got clients that they book me, and I get to them and I say to them, okay, right, what's the brief? What are we doing? And they said, well, you're the creative person. We trust you.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, now I need to kind of figure out what the hell I must do for them.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, that kind of trust that clients has got in me,
Yeah,
makes it much easier to get work done correctly for them.
absolutely. But I mean, it's very difficult. You have those clients that have a very clear vision in their minds, and you have to follow that and actually jump into their skin, and really figure out what does he want. And then on the opposite, you have those people that say, oh, you're the creative person, do whatever you want, we need this by the end of the day, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
that's I think that the creative part of this industry is what keeps me going. Because if it was just, and I've said it on almost every one of these where I've spoken to photographers, is that a lot of my photography friends, they take the camera out on a Saturday at a wedding, they pack it away. Sunday morning they dump the cards. And the only time they touch the camera again is next weekend at the next wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not like you, where fly fishing is your passion, I love landscape. So if there's a good sunset and I know a nice spot that will work, I take my camera and I go. And I don't shoot that in any way with anything in mind as to how I'm going to sell this or who's going to buy this from me or where is it. I just go do it for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. A lot of photographers, they only do it for the money and not for the passion. Not that there's a lot of money in it, but
yeah. I find a huge difference to be how disciplined you are, because there are so many tiny flaws that can come in, and other photographers might say, "Oh, I'm fine with that." But if you're very strict to yourself and harsh on yourself, and what I do is every time I take pictures, actually I critique myself. And I have never had a picture taken where I say I'm 100% content with it. Never. It hasn't happened yet. I'm maybe 97%, but I'm always going to say, oh, I wish the composition was a little more like this or whatever, or tiny technical aspects. And you can tell the difference between, to me at least, very disciplined people that really are focused. And that again shows if the passion is behind this, the heart is in there, which actually expresses itself in this strong discipline that you really want to deliver. And I agree with you. I basically do this for myself and for the effect an image can have on a person. That to me is wonderful. Mostly when I show my underwater images, many people say, wow, I didn't know a tuna, a bonefish, or whatever fish would look so beautiful underwater. I didn't know. And for them, it's canned tuna. They know some images or grab and grin pictures of tuna taken out of the water. But seeing a photo of a fish that isn't hooked underwater, it is eye-opening to many people. And that to me it's very fulfilling. That gives me great joy and pushes me harder to be even better. So that's great.
That's also the big part of what we do. And as I've said this to a lot of people, is that we as photographers, we get to go to places, see things, experience things, and even in just normal work that you like, going to photograph a building of whatever it is.
Yeah.
You get to see behind the scenes where nobody else will see.
Yeah.
And I think that is what makes the work we do so special, is that I've had clients where I do quite a bit of work for wineries. I've had clients where I go into them and they say, okay, right, Dewald, we need to see you about a concept we want to do. So I go in, and it takes us 15 minutes to talk about the concept. But hours later, I walk out of there. I've had a private wine tasting from him with different wines. And he's not going to do that for anybody that walks into his winery on a Saturday morning wanting to come and taste wine.
Yeah.
That's just a simple example. So we are very privileged in what we do and get to see.
I totally agree. And I want to top that.
Okay.
To me, photography, especially in that niche of fly fishing or wildlife or underwater, is also something very personal, because it was my view in that very moment that I share with the people. And this is how I saw it. This is how I pressed the shutter in that moment. That is what unrolled in front of the camera. And that is, to me, very often a very personal moment, mostly beautiful moments that I'm very privileged to have lived, that I'm now sharing, which is wonderful to me. And like you say, going on a winery and seeing it from angles, and being introduced to a place in a very special way. It's almost kind of like an intimacy, where, and in that way you open the eye to other people, or many people are, as you mentioned, that I talked to, said, oh, I've been to that place many times, but I didn't know there were those beautiful flats or those beautiful fish or those beautiful buildings, because they don't look to the left and the right and up and down. And this is what we do.
Yes.
We go up when the sun rises, when it goes down, and we have open eyes and open hearts 24/7, or at least I have. I love to observe, to watch minute details. I love that. It's, yeah, that's what drives me.
That's amazing. So, okay, to get back to your fishing, and because that's where I think where it all started. Do you still fly fish on a regular basis, or do you just do photos?
I do. I'd say not 80% taking stills, filming, and 20% fishing. But actually, I went fishing 2 days ago, and this year I fished quite a good amount. I went to the Seychelles. I just returned 3 weeks ago. I went pike fishing 2 days ago with a good friend of mine called Frank. We caught 3 pikes each. So this year is quite good fishing wise, but usually I'm holding a camera, and yeah, I reckon when you come to a certain age, I don't have to fish 24/7. I'm not that driven anymore. And it's, yeah, I enjoy watching people catch fish, taking photos of them. I enjoy the mutual concept of fishing. I rarely go fishing by myself, very rarely. And once in a while, I love to cast a line. I love the act of fly casting. To me, that is wonderful. I love just casting. That casting a line is
Well,
awesome.
with fly fishing, the biggest appeal for me, and I don't fish that much anymore. But 2 months ago, we went away for the weekend, and I took my fly rod with, and it was the first time I went fishing in probably about 2 or 3 years where I went fly fishing. There's a couple of dams around the town I live with that's got some nice bass fishing in. Done a little bit, but it was just the whole act of fly fishing. The biggest thing for me is to get that thing to eat the fly. Once you've hooked the fish, the fight is fun, but it's not that adrenaline run when you pull that line and it just feels like you've hooked into something and the thing just takes off. That's the best feeling ever in fly fishing.
I totally agree, but I reckon I'm probably, I don't know if it's a step further from that stage. I had this kind of like 5-6 years ago where the tug is the drug. Now I just cast a line when I know it's just the perfect setting. I know, oh wow, that is a beautiful fish now. I want to catch it now. I want to release it quick. And when I just feel like, and I say, okay, now I want to do this. But I still get, this fire in me. Many people ask me, are you still fired up to go fishing? And oh, definitely. I reckon it's never going to go away. It burns in me. I'm a fisherman. So, but I don't have to catch the numbers anymore. I don't have to catch the biggest fish. I don't care.
It's about the experience.
It's the experience. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so where I found you is those articles that you did on catching tuna and tarpon from your float tube.
Yes.
And we quickly talked about that earlier this morning. And you explained to me quickly what your drive was behind that. My biggest question I've got for you with that, weren't you shit scared in the water on the float tube?
No, not at all. And I can tell you why. First of all, that might sound very weird to you. I am not a high-risk behavior person. I'm absolutely not. So when I caught, let's start by the yellowfin tuna. That is very, very many moons ago. It must be 2006, I reckon. Yeah, so long ago, 1.5 decades. And I went to Costa Rica, and I had just finished, it was kind of like a tough time in work, and I just needed a break. And I wanted to do a do-it-yourself trip on the lowest possible cost. And I went to the west coast of Costa Rica I stayed for 3 weeks in a very small fishing village, and I had the float tube with me and a 12-weight rod. And I hooked up with a local fisherman that had a very small panga. So he took me out to the blue water, and then he dumped me with a float tube, but he stayed around. And I started fishing, but still we drifted because you have strong currents on the ocean. But he could still see me. And we were fishing kind of like in depths of 100 meters. And there were always these schools of yellowfin tuna busting around me. And I caught several smallish yellowfin tuna from the float tube, which was just super fun. But there were no sharks. It was totally safe. He saw me, the water was flat. I was in contact with him. But actually we drifted quite far offshore at some stages, and I had humpback whales come right by the float tube. So I knew, oh wow, we might be a little bit too far offshore now. And but it worked totally fine. No sharks, no large fish kept trying to kill me, no big waves, nothing. And I've done float tubing on the open ocean quite a few times, not only in Costa Rica, also in Taiwan, where I caught giant trevally and wahoo and dorado from the float tube. So that was a lot.
Seen those pictures yet?
There are very few on Insta, very few.
Okay.
So you have to go deep, but I didn't post much of these pictures. Yeah, I don't post all my pictures. Yeah, and
my biggest worry would be to sit there and you have a mako shark or something like that coming in because there's blood and there's fish trailing and everything. That's the first thing going through my mind. I'm not a very scared person of sharks, but I know deep water can be very scary if the conditions.
It can be very scary, and you have to respect it and not lose the respect. I totally agree. For example, in most parts of Florida, I wouldn't float tube. I just did a work in November for a kayak company, and I hooked a smallish fish called trout, speckled trout, and just like 5 seconds after the hookup, a huge bull shark came and killed it and smashed it into pieces. So being in a float tube there, no, not for me. But still, the chances that something really bad happens to you are very, very slim in a float tube. Even though if you have your feet dangling out, you could still raise them and put them out of the water. A shark might bite into the float tube, which wouldn't be the perfect scenario. But still, chances of, it goes really bad or super slim.
And when you fish for the tarpon of the float tube, because that's probably an estuary kind of environments, that's where and where the tarpons live, there's lots of bull sharks, and anyway, so that would have been, and that's dirty water. It's not blue clear water where you've got 5 meter visibility down.
It is. That's what it is. But I have to go a little bit longer on that, on the tarpon thing from the flow tube. A very good friend of mine, Freddie, who introduced me to fly fishing, said, someday we need to catch a big tarpon. And what we did is, and we're talking the beginning of the 2001 and 2, so long time ago, almost 20 years ago. Internet was basically in its infancy. And what we did, we Googled for places that potentially have tarpon, but where no one goes. And that was Central America, Nicaragua. And precisely on the Atlantic coast. They had to be tarpon there because it's their habitat, but it wasn't on the fishing map. So what we did in 2000, 2001, we had on our printers pictures of tarpon printed out that we brought along as we traveled to Nicaragua along the coast. And we showed the pictures to fishermen and said, that's the fish we want. And we actually met an awesome, super old guy, which was not super old, but he was in his mid 60s, 20 years ago. And he said, oh, I know this fish. And I know a very special place where you're going to catch huge ones. And then we knew that's our man. And the place was so remote, it was a pain in the bum to get there. And we usually had to buy all the foods, fuel, camp out there, fish very early in the morning, and it wasn't fulfilling to fish it from the big boat. You could see that the fish would react to the boat. They were shy, they were a little spooky. And it still took me 5 more years to suddenly the idea popped in my head, I should bring a float tube. So in 2006 or 7, the first time I brought a float tube, and on this trip I was with a very good friend of mine also called Daniel. And on the very first day, I pumped up the float tube. We were at this super nice tarpon place, and he laughed at me.
Is this also Nicaragua?
It is, yeah. Yeah, so I pump up the float tube and my buddy Daniel says, oh, I'm gonna watch you drown in like a split second. This is gonna go, it's not gonna work anyway, but I'm gonna watch you and I'm gonna laugh big time. I jump on the float tube. It took less than 10 minutes and I hooked into a 100-pound fish. And now the crazy thing is I landed this fish within 10 minutes. It was landed, I removed the hook, I released it just in perfect condition, less than 10 minutes. And from that moment on, my buddy Daniel said, I want to jump in that float tube right now, go out. And it works perfectly, hooking, fighting, landing, releasing tarpon from a float tube. The first thing that really was striking is the fish do not realize that you are there when you are in a float tube. So you can basically approach a tarpon 3 feet, 4 feet, like a meter. They don't care. For them, you are flotsam on the river, like a big log, whatever. And even when you push the fins and start moving, they don't care. Actually, we had tarpon coming to you because you create kind of like a natural wake with your fins. And tarpon are kind of like curious and came to your wake. But anyhow, you can perfectly position yourself when you have tarpon coming to you, which is essential when you go tarpon fishing, because you should have this 180-degree angle. If that's the perfect shot, presentation cast. If you're angled to the fish's direction, your chances of hooking a tarpon are diminishing. So there are many advantages. So you can get very close. The fish don't care that you are there. You can make a perfect presentation. And then hooking the fish is another huge advantage. The moment you hook the fish, you can kick your fins and you're going to tighten the line. So you always have a perfect connection to the fish. And then when you fight the fish, which is also super essential when tarpon fishing is, you should always be in the opposite direction of the fish's swimming direction. From a boat, that is very tricky because a boat is way too slow to react super fast. But with a float tube, you're constantly reacting to the fish's movement, and you tire a fish of 100 pounds within 15 minutes, no problem. And you can land it super fast, you can release it super fine. And I've actually caught most of my huge tarpon all from a float tube.
But and also what I'm thinking now is because you've got this big floating thing,
yeah,
and where a boat is anchored, or very heavy for the fish to pull, you'll quickly pop leaders and tippets and stuff. Whereas where the float tube, they can pull you, but also it's this big floating thing, so that's also going to make them tired quickly. That's what the
absolutely.
The spearfish, they shoot tuna, they've got this big floats that tire the fish quickly. So
exactly, absolutely. And what I can do is I can actually adjust the pressure that I put on the fish just by changing and being more sideways to the fish. So it's going to have more pull on the float tube or having to pull me, or I can stick down my fins pretty much perpendicularly, which makes a huge drag in the water, and this tires the fish very, very fast. But let me come back to your question. I had talked to many locals in that area of Nicaragua, and I had talked to them, and I had asked them, have you ever seen bull shark? Have you ever been attacked? Everyone said to me no. And usually those indigenous people have fancy stories around sharks and demons and whatever. They didn't have any. They have all kinds of other stories of being attacked by tarpon, whatever, or fancy accident, but no one has been actually bitten by a shark or a crocodile. And they have crocodiles in the water, and they have bull sharks, but those sharks and also the crocodiles are very, very spooky. I reckon they are hunted for, and the bull sharks are not kind of like educated on hooked fish like they are in Florida. So you are absolutely safe. I never had a situation that was hairy where suddenly a croc came out from a mangrove or a bull shark. Never, not in 15 years. So all good.
Unbelievable. So
yeah.
how did you, okay, so obviously you guys went, you didn't, there's very few friends that knew that this is what you're going to be doing. And then you got those amazing pictures of sitting in a float tube with a tarpon jumping in front of you. And I think that caught the attention of the whole world. So
it did.
All the fly fishermen saw that kind of stuff, that read those magazines. And I think you said Catch magazine and This Is Fly.
Exactly.
Was in. And how did you pitch the story to them?
The first pitch was to This Is Fly, and I sent them over the pictures, and they said, "What is going on here?" And they immediately wanted to get the whole portfolio, and then I knew, oh, I might have something here that is kind of like where, to me, it wasn't new. To me, I was used to this, and the fly fishing world was kind of like missing this kind of freak show, because that was totally new, unseen, and that
missing it right now again.
Yeah,
it's missing it. Everybody's going to Seychelles. Everybody's going to Florida. It's all the usual stuff, and they need something new again.
I totally agree. And that was fresh. That was new. That was unexpected. So I had the publication in This Is Fly. And then I returned, and the one that was kind of like the recce. That was the test drive, because I had a crappy float tube on the first trip. And for the return trip, I received a float tube from Outcast, which is awesome, which is a perfect float tube for that.
Those fish cats.
Yeah, exactly. The super fat cat.
Yeah.
And they were bloody red, the float tubes, which is awesome for photography. And I did 1 or 2 return trips, and I knew more, and I had the place pretty well figured out how to catch them, because it's all kinds of various scenarios. You can catch the tarpon in huge bays, you can catch them in big rivers, and you can also catch them in very small creeks that have super clear water. So we had all these different settings that we all fished in there from the flow tubes, all for triple digit tarpon. So I was more prepared. I took more pictures, and then the next pitch came to Catch Magazine. And I sent them a portfolio. They immediately jumped on it. And actually, Brian told me, it's a few years ago, I can tell for now for sure, that this portfolio and in this issue, it was one of the most viewed in their magazine. So I knew, wow, we have to do, we might go a step further here. And that is by the time when the 5D Mark II came out, the Canon 5D Mark II DSLR came out. And I had approached several people and I wanted to do a film there, because then I had realized, wow, that is crazy. The people need to see this in motion picture. And I had approached all the big names in the film business back in the day. And they all replied to me, it's an awesome idea, but nah, thanks, I'll skip that. I'm busy painting my horse or whatever. That's all the replies I got from all the big people and from all the big names in the industry. So I was kind of like frustrated. And by that time, I had linked up with one of my best friends, Kirsten from Denmark. We were kind of like chatting a lot about fly fishing photography. And just, I visited him a lot often in Denmark back in the days, like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. We went sea trout fishing together. And he's that kind of people, you know, it links perfectly right from the beginning. And I told him, Yen, would you like to do a film on tarpon fishing from the flow tube? Would you like to do this, what I've done in all the still campaigns? And he immediately said, yes, let's do it. And it was just a dream project, because it was a very basic project. We had picked up 5D Mark IIs and a 7D. And actually back in the days, they told us that it's one of the very first totally outdoor related production that was filmed on DSLRs. And we were one of the very first. Actually, we were checking forums every day on how do you work a DSLR as a film camera, because no one knew. But
also it was super basic. It was manual focus. You couldn't directly quickly move your focus point. Nothing like that. It was
nothing.
And that was pretty horrible, shooting with those kind of cameras if you're not used to pulling focus and everything.
It's horrible, but it's great on the other side too, because you are not relying on fancy gear. It's back to basic handwork, and it's back to the basics, which is awesome. It's about having your exposure right. It's about color, content, composition, focus. It's getting back to the very basics of photography and film, which I loved. And yeah, we had to pull focus. We had a small wheel on it with a band on it. It's all shot manually. And but the image that came out was just, it was mind blowing. It was an image never seen before in fly fishing films. It was the cine style. And the trip we had, which is exactly 10 years ago when we shot it, was just, it was a dream trip.
But where can we see that footage now? Because I can't remember that I've seen the video yet.
Oh, I have good news, which I'm not totally allowed to tell you now. Now the film is available on video on demand. We sold it, yeah, on Vimeo, and in the early days we sold DVDs and Blu-rays, which are now absolutely dead. Yeah. Then we skip to video on demand, and we might go the next step and have it just out there for everyone. But we're still discussing this. We have to pull out a few contracts. I can't guarantee you this on this stage, but once it's happening, I'll let you know. So so just to kind of like celebrate the 10th anniversary, I'll keep you posted, Dewald.
And will you go do another one like that?
No. What I did when Top Pump came out, it drove everyone crazy. And what happened, the next step was I got approached by a big company called Icon Films, who shoots the River Monster series for Discovery Channel. And they approached me and they hired me as a production coordinator for an episode where we went to this location and where the lead presenter called Jeremy Wade caught tarpon from a raft. And we had a whole story around this. And also this episode was one of the most successful on Animal Planet, one of the most viewed, with close to 2 million viewers. Unique viewers on the first screening. So that was amazing. So for me, doing this episode with Jeremy Wade was kind of like the pinnacle. And then I knew, close this chapter. I cannot top this. It's good. I'm said, I'm not, I haven't said this. I don't like to drop numbers on this because I don't care much about numbers, but catching a 200-pound tarpon from a float tube successfully, I cannot top this. I'm done. It's all good. So it's off to the next chapter. So I haven't returned. And when I look back at the last 3 decades of my fly fishing, I always have had kind of like chapters, fish that really drove me crazy. And the 2000s, from 2000 to, let's say, 2010, 11, 12, that was the tarpon decade for me. And then I said, I've closed this chapter. I might go fishing maybe someday in Florida or Africa for tarpon, but this location for me, I'm good, I'm fine.
Yeah, no, that's, I think tarpon is on every single fly fisherman's bucket list to catch. And a long time ago, that's one of the things I still want to get a tattoo, but something here.
Yeah.
And I said, shit, that tarpon scales will look really cool here. And I said, no, I can't do that. You can't put a tarpon tattoo on your body if you haven't caught one.
I agree.
That's like the pinnacle of your fly fishing career is to do that, and you can't jump the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but have you seen the tarpon that has been coming out of West Africa?
I have been following this for a very long time, actually, and I'm familiar with all the fancy spots they have right there. I've talked to many people that live in Africa. I know the fishery is. I'm a spoiled bitch when it comes to tarpon fishing, and because the fishing we had was unreal. I mean, the film is the proof. And the fishing in West Africa can be very rough. It's in river mouth. It's kind of like rough surf. The fish are huge. I know this. I might go someday. Sierra Leone has been very high on my wish list to go. But I have managed. And Africa is a rough place. I mean, Central America, those are very rough places to go. Central America is also a very tough place to go to travel. There's a very high crime rate. We had a few hairy situations, nothing really dangerous, but things that are horrible. The problem is where we caught all those tarpon in Nicaragua is the spot that is very well known for cocaine trafficking. And it's called White Lobster there. And you actually have an industry that is specialized. I have to tell a little bit further here. When the boats from Colombia come, they pass along Nicaragua, and then they go to the US. And the order that the drug trafficking people have is, if you lose a boat in the maze that Nicaragua is, with all the mangroves and all the bays and all this stuff, they go through this. And sometimes they hit the grounds because they go full throttle at night. So they might hit the mangroves, and the trafficking people leave the whole cargo. They just leave the boats there. And this happens regularly on that part of the coast. And you have an industry that is actually specialized on getting that white lobster. And there are communities where everyone is high on cocaine. And I'm talking children, mid-aged people, policemen, elderly. They are all high on cocaine because it's so cheap. And they snatch, they go to those boats that's stranded in the mangroves. They get all the big piles of cocaine, and then they sell it kind of like an aftermarket. They sell it to the US, to the country itself, and they make huge amounts of money, and they're high all the time. And we met those people quite a few times, and it's tricky. And we never had a super dangerous situations, but they're high, and they're many people saw that we were trafficking and trying to get the drugs too. So it was kind of like weird for the people to explain, oh, I just brought my float tube and I just want to fish for tarpon. That didn't make much sense to the people. So
you actually ran into the drug dealers on the river.
Yes, we met the people that are specialized on getting those boats many times, actually. Yeah, it's kind of like in a cheap film. They're in a panga that is overpowered. They have gold necklaces and they have AK-47s, and they look like in a cheap drug trafficking film or one of those films you see on Netflix. That's exactly how it is, exactly. And everyone knows what they're doing. The cops know it, and they're in the business too. So it's a rough place, and we have been controlled by those people too. So it's weird situations.
So, but it wasn't like that where you could go in and at least meet some of them and tell them, right, this is what we want to do. We don't want to be in anybody's space.
I have. Because every time we went there, we had to ask for permission to fish their indigenous waters. Those people are the owners of the fish and the waters. So on the very first day we arrive, we go to the chiefs of the community and we ask for permission to fish the waters, they sacred waters. And so we are always meeting these weird people, drugged up. Some are very fine, but most of them are high on cocaine. And that's what we had to do. And I always got a written document that we are allowed to fish, do catch and release for tarpon. And we actually had to show this paper quite a few times to so-called cops or police or whatever. And just to be safe. And then the community know, oh, okay, there's this weird German again who's fishing for tarpon. After a few years, they knew me. So it was fine. And they knew I wasn't interested in buying cocaine or whatever. Or, I mean, you can easily buy cocaine there, buy big piles. You can buy it. It's no problem. But not for me, just for tarpon.
It's enough. There's enough drugs in the tarpon fishing than what there is sniffing it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And if you obviously went there on a shoestring budget to film this thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of cost to produce that, it must have been pretty cost effective, apart from the traveling and all that kind of stuff, to actually make this film.
Actually, the return on invest on the film I did with Jan was superb. I've never had this afterwards because it was a super cheap production. It was just the two of us. We slept in a camp that we built with two local guys. So it was a dirt cheap production. We had brought along a 5D Mark II, Jan. I had brought along a 7D, and the GoPro had just come out. So that's what we had. We had 4 external hard drives, 2 laptops, 4 12-weight rods, 4 reels. That's it. Hammock. That's it. It was dirt cheap.
How did you charge the batteries?
We had a generator. Okay. Yeah, we had a Honda generator that worked kind of like an hour a day. So we charged batteries, and we could run the laptops, no problem. There are actually a few pictures on my Insta of that when we did all the data, saving the files at night, and you also see that in the film actually. And but we slept outside for almost 3 weeks, and the production took 3 weeks.
That the Central America, you also must be quite brave to sleep outside there, because the insects and stuff will just eat you alive.
Absolutely. Actually, I on the very first trips, I slept just on the floor on the bottom outside. I was eaten by mosquitoes, by cockroaches. I had rats walking around me at night. And then I figured out, we should bring hammocks. Then I had a hammock, and I realized the mosquito net that I had over me, the mesh wasn't tight enough. So the bugs would still come in. Oh. And then on the following trips, I figured out I need a good hammock with a very tight net, with a very tight mesh over it. And on the last trips, it was kind of like luxury. I wasn't worried by the bugs. They wouldn't come in and pest me. And but it also depends on which time you go. What we did is we just went just before the raining season would start. Okay. Once the raining season starts, it's unbearable. It's very humid. You get eaten alive by the bugs, by the mosquitoes. But just to fish in that switch is just the perfect time. But the last trips were kind of like luxurious. We had good tents, good places to sleep outside, and especially on the River Monsters shoot, the whole crew slept outside too. We had a very basic camp built right by the river. We had a generator again, and those crews are hardcore anyhow. They are used to sleep in very tough places, but it was very nice.
Yeah. Okay, right. If there's anything that you still want to go do in terms of fly fishing, or places that you would like to see, what is high up on your bucket list at the moment?
Jeez.
It doesn't have to be that you have to go do it tomorrow. Is that you want to be there one day and to experience it?
Yeah. Like back in the days when I started fly fishing with my very good buddy Freddie, that introduced me to fly fishing, we did a lot of traveling in our early 20s on a very low budget to Venezuela. And we went to the Amazon and fished for a fish called payara.
Yeah.
That saber-toothed predator.
There's a picture of it on your Instagram as well, and it's a old fly rod, and looks like a Lefty's Deceiver kind of fly that you used.
Wow, Dewald, you're very good. I'm impressed. Exactly. That is a quarter century ago. That is from 96, 97. So, and what we did is that's all do it yourself 25 years ago. Fishing was very simple gear, 8-weight fly rods, fishing deceivers. And regarding the fish's behavior, it's comparable to salmon, to Atlantic salmon actually. When you look at their body size, their shape, they have an adipose, but they're just those vicious predatory fish. And what the fish do, they migrate. Millions of fish, small fish, migrating upstream to spawn, and those payara follow. And can you still see me? Because it's good. Yeah. So the fishing is comparable to salmon fishing. You do kind of like a wet fly swing, and you get a super hard bite on it, and the fight is amazing. But what is most striking, you're in an absolutely stunning environment, which is that Amazon forest, rivers, those huge rivers that run through a granite bed. Super clear water, you can drink the water. So to answer your question, I would love to go back and fish for it.
But But the payara fishing, I've only seen limited kind of stuff of the payara fishing over the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years. The golden dorado is like the hottest thing in South America at the moment.
Absolutely.
But how did you guys figure out 25 years ago to go fish for payara?
This I have to credit Freddie for. Freddie always traveled with his father when he was a teenager. And he had read about this fish and how to get to a very specific place in Venezuela in a very known German fishing magazine called Blinker. And he talked to his father and said, oh, we need to go. And they actually did. And they traveled to this place and found out this amazing fishery. And one day I had the privilege to join him, and we have been there kind of like 4 or 5 times, but we're talking mid-90s here, 1990s. And so that's how he found out. And he just went basically and explored for himself. We did a lot of exploration. We hooked up with the local guy, fishing from a dugout canoe. We traveled to all kinds of spots and looked for the best potential payara spots, which is always where the river narrows and you have super strong currents. And the fishing is just awesome. I would love to go back, and getting there now with the country being in a horrible state right now, I reckon it wouldn't be very wise to go now. I'm not sure.
But I think there's other couple of spots in South America where you should also be able to get payara, and that I've also seen. But the golden dorado in those small streams, it's like trout fishing in like a creek, but for a 20-pound fish.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty high up on my bucket list of what I want to do.
Do it, Dewald, do it.
So the South African rand versus the US dollar is not in our favor at the moment. And on the photographer's budget as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, I would like to do this. And then I've been to the Bahamas in the mid-2000s in Mayaguana, which is a lesser known island of the Bahamas. And I had great fishing there. It was tricky for bonefish. I love bone fishing. And what I love about fly fishing is when you're on foot, when you walk, when you explore it. I don't like to have a boat, an engine, a chopper, whatever mean of transportation involved. I don't like that. I want to go out there. I want to walk. I want to discover being on foot. That's what I love. And this is why I love bone fishing so much. I love walking all day long and look for fish. That to me is very fulfilling.
It's like hunting, or that's where I see fly fishing. It's not you can put a bait on a hook and throw it in the river and sit there with a beer and wait for something to swim by. But when you're fishing any artificial kind of stuff, lures, fly, you are busy hunting whatever fish you're looking for, and it's figuring out, understanding what's going on. And a long time ago, I said already, I don't want to come home in the evening and smell like bait.
Yeah.
Because when you come home from fly fishing, you smell like sweat. You're tired. You just want to have something to eat and crash. But yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. No, the approach of fly fishing is beautiful. To deceive fish, to tie your own flies, to cast a line, and actually, most fly fishing takes place in beautiful landscapes, because you said you like landscape photography. Be it trout, bonefish, payara, tarpon, it all happens in beautiful landscapes. We're very privileged. It doesn't happen in your backyard. It can happen too if you want to. You can discover some great fishing. But most fly fishing takes place in amazing surroundings, which is a huge bonus. And I love that. I love to be in the outdoors, explore. Yeah, as I said in the beginning, open heart, open eyes. I love that. I love to be fed, have input.
Yeah, that's part of the whole experience. Oh, no, it's amazing.
Cool.
Well, is there any big projects you're busy working with in terms of fly fishing? I know you said you came from the Seychelles.
Yeah, I just returned from the Seychelles, which was a private trip, which was a kind of like revisiting of St. Joseph. I did this trip with a very good friend of mine that I mentioned earlier, Daniel. We did this trip exactly 10 years ago, which was awesome, onto the St. Joseph's Atoll. And we returned now 10 years later. It was very tough. The weather was very foul most of the time. The fishing was very tricky, but we got some nice fish. And the snorkeling was amazing. We did a lot of free diving, which I also love to do. But that was a private trip. Currently, I'm working on smaller film projects. I have a film that's going to come out very soon on fly fishing for salmon in Norway. That's going to be called First. It's going to pop out anytime. Then I'm in the post-production of a small documentary that I'm doing with another German guy called Christoph. And we're focusing on the importance of large wooded debris in rivers and the importance large wooded debris have in riverbeds, in the whole aspect of it, be it for fish, for the morphology of a river, what it means, and we're just doing a film on that.
So about the wood in the actual rivers.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
I'm quite into my aquariums as well, and there's a terminology that they use for aquariums called black water.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what it is it's all natural leaves and twigs and stuff that release tannins, and you've got this. You know what the water looks like in South America? It's a rich brown water, and that's what my aquarium is like. Everything is natural. I've got gas coming from the bottom, and I've got a little 3-foot aquarium, and it is as natural as can be. And my fish are spawning every week in my tank.
Nice.
And that is, and a lot of people, now that you mentioned that, it's quite interesting. There's a lot of people that they want these pristine waters in their tanks with heavy filters and CO2 for the plants and everything, but that's not what the fish want.
Exactly. They want structure. They want to hide in the tree. And the importance of wooded debris in rivers is just huge. And mostly in
the
exactly.
microorganisms living in the debris is so much food in those. I'm just looking at my fish tank. There's so much food in the bed that I often don't need to feed the fish for a day or two.
Yeah, it's like a reef in a river. It's unreal. So we're just doing a project on that. Then I have smaller projects here, kind of like daily jobs here. I'm going to do another big project on a building site very soon that I need to film and actually show how it evolves, and from beginning to the end, which is a project that spans over almost 2 years, which is going to start now. So, and what I also do, I have quite a few projects per year for a big French magazine, travel magazine called Voyage de Pêche. I usually do 2-3 projects for them, which is still projects. I've been to Madagascar 2 years ago. Last year, I went to Florida. I went to a small island called Rodrigue 1.5 years ago. So I do, it's just writing articles for them. And so all kinds of projects, happening.
Well, I think we should wrap this up as well. It's about almost 9:15. I can go on for hours.
Let's do a sequel. We need to talk more about blue water and free diving.
Yeah, well, there's so much to talk about. But Daniel, thank you so much. You must please send me all the links where people can find, where they can watch that video of yours. Kind of thing, so that I can put them in the description.
Cool.
And we get the people to experience these things again that happened 13 years, 12 years ago, whatever.
I will send them all to you so we can share them. Cool. Thank you very much, Dewald.
Now, thank you for coming.
Dewald.
Thank you for coming to chat to me. It's been really interesting.
Cheers, Dewald.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.